At exactly 3:22 a.m. on September 12th, 2024, Mike Rivers cut through security tape on container JWL 4789, uncovering $8 million in rare diamonds meant for Vegas casinos. The night shift supervisor was out cold. Mike had spiked his coffee 20 minutes earlier. By dawn, Mike disappeared with enough jewels to retire forever. But he left behind a security badge that would expose the most elaborate airport heist in aviation history. This wasn't just a robbery. It was a masterclass in deception. Mike exploited every weakness, from inside sabotage to perfect timing. And when everything nearly unraveled, his next move shocked everyone involved. If you want to hear how Mike pulled off this unbelievable heist, hit that subscribe button now. And if you love stories full of cunning plans and jaw-dropping twists, smash that like button. Let's dive in. Mike's hands shake violently as he cuts through the thick container seal with his razor-sharp box cutter. Sweat drips steadily down his weathered face, despite the bone-chilling Nevada desert night. The cold metal of the container feels like ice against his trembling fingers. This is it, the biggest, most dangerous score of his entire miserable life. $2 million in casino cash, just sitting there in the pitch-black darkness, like a treasure chest waiting to be opened. "Mike, we got serious company moving fast," Jake whispers urgently through the crackling radio static. His voice is thick with terror. Carlos is back early from his break with some guys in expensive suits. They look like federal agents. Federal agents. The words hit Mike like a physical blow. His blood runs ice cold through his veins, and his heart stops beating for a terrifying moment. He can hear heavy footsteps getting closer and closer, authoritative voices echoing menacingly through the massive cargo bay like thunder. The container is half open, revealing stacks of cash bundles clearly visible in his flashlight beam. There's no hiding what he's doing. "Search every single container in Section C immediately," a deep, commanding voice orders with military precision. "We know for certain that someone's been systematically hitting these high-value shipments. Lock down the entire area." Mike has exactly two choices facing him right now. Run immediately and lose everything he's worked for, or grab what cash he can carry and pray for a miracle that will save his life. The heavy footsteps are getting dangerously closer with each passing second. 15 seconds until discovery. 10 seconds until federal prison. 5 seconds until his life changes forever. He frantically stuffs thick cash bundles into his heavy work bag with desperate speed, his heart pounding so thunderously loud against his ribs that he's absolutely certain they'll hear it echoing through the cargo bay. The powerful flashlight beam hits the concrete wall exactly 3 feet from where he's crouched in absolute terror, frozen like a deer in headlights. "Clear in this section," the FBI agent shouts to his partner. Mike holds his breath until his lungs burn with fire. One more second, and his life changes forever in the most dramatic way possible. Either he becomes incredibly rich beyond his wildest dreams, or he becomes a federal prisoner for the rest of his natural life. But to understand exactly how Mike Rivers ended up crammed inside a cargo container with $2 million stolen dollars while armed FBI agents search frantically for him with guns drawn, we need to go back 6 long months earlier to the precise moment that started this incredible criminal journey. Mike Rivers had been mindlessly moving heavy boxes at McCarran International Airport for 22 soul-crushing years of his life. Same mind-numbing routine every single day. Same pathetically small paycheck every 2 weeks. Same completely invisible existence where nobody even knew his name. At 50 years old, he earned exactly $52,000 annually, handling precious cargo worth millions and millions of dollars every single day of the week. The crushing, bitter irony ate at him constantly like acid burning through his stomach lining. He lived alone in a cramped, dingy apartment with peeling paint and broken air conditioning. His ex-wife had left him 10 years ago, taking their only child with her to California. He had no friends, no hobbies, no reason to get up in the morning, except the desperate need to pay rent and buy cheap food. Mike Rivers was the definition of a man with absolutely nothing to lose. Tuesday night, March 5th, changed everything in Mike's miserable, pointless existence. Mike was carefully operating the bright yellow forklift in Section C when the ancient hydraulics failed catastrophically without any warning whatsoever. The heavy steel forks dropped suddenly and violently like a guillotine, puncturing container JWL 4789 with tremendous force. The thick metal walls tore apart like cheap tissue paper, spilling the secret contents across the cold, dirty concrete floor in a spectacular cascade. Cash, mountains of cash. Bundles and bundles and bundles of crisp, beautiful cash wrapped tightly in clear plastic like Christmas presents from heaven. "Sweet Jesus Christ Almighty," Mike whispered under his breath, his voice trembling with shock and disbelief. He was staring at more money than he had ever seen in his entire lifetime, more money than he had ever dreamed existed in one place. Carlos Martinez, his overweight supervisor with the perpetually sweaty face, came running desperately across the cargo bay like his pants were on fire. His heavy breathing echoed through the terminal as his work boots slapped against concrete. "Don't look at it. Don't touch anything. Just clean it up right fucking now," Carlos snapped frantically, his round face pale white with absolute terror. Small beads of sweat were forming on his forehead, despite the cool night air. "This never happened. You understand me perfectly? This never happened. And if you breathe one word about this to anyone, you're fired immediately." Mike nodded slowly and obediently, but his sharp, calculating mind was already racing at full speed like a computer processing information. As he carefully scooped the scattered money back into the badly damaged container, with shaking hands, he methodically counted at least 50 thick bundles. If each individual bundle contained $10,000, and they looked exactly like the money bundles he'd seen in movies, that was $500,000 scattered across the floor like worthless garbage. "What kind of cargo is this supposed to be according to the official paperwork?" Mike asked with perfect innocence, trying to keep his voice steady and normal. "Machine parts," Carlos said much too quickly, his voice cracking with obvious nervousness. "According to the official shipping manifest, just regular industrial machine parts. Nothing special." But Mike knew that machine parts definitely don't come wrapped in plastic with official bank bands around them. Mike had been working around all kinds of cargo for long enough to recognize real money when he saw it with his own eyes. This was the genuine article. That night, Mike couldn't sleep even one single minute. He lay in his lumpy bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, thinking obsessively about those beautiful bundles of cash, about the look of absolute panic and terror on Carlos's sweaty face, about the way his supervisor's hands had been shaking uncontrollably as he desperately stuffed the money back into the container, like his very life depended on keeping it secret. The next day, Mike started asking very careful, strategic questions around the airport, quietly, cautiously, methodically. He was like a detective investigating the crime of the century. He discovered through careful research that container JWL-4789 belonged to something called Secure Transport Solutions, a mysterious company he had never heard of, despite handling their valuable shipments twice a week for many months. Mike spent his entire lunch break researching the company online using his old smartphone, diving deep into public records and shipping databases. Secure Transport Solutions had no official website anywhere on the internet, no social media presence whatsoever, no legitimate business listings in any directory, but Mike found scattered mentions of them in detailed shipping manifests and comprehensive cargo logs buried in airport databases. Always the exact same route every single time. Los Angeles to Las Vegas back to Los Angeles. Always containers officially labeled as machine parts or industrial equipment or other boring, mundane items that nobody would question. Always much heavier than the official manifest indicated they should be. Mike realized with growing excitement that he had accidentally stumbled onto something absolutely massive and potentially life-changing. Casinos moved enormous amounts of physical cash between different cities to avoid strict banking regulations and intense federal oversight. It was perfectly legal under Nevada state law, but it required absolute secrecy and security. One leak, one security breach, one loose-lipped employee talking to the wrong person, and millions upon millions could vanish into thin air without a trace. And Mike Rivers was the guy moving those millions every single week, completely invisible and totally trusted. Over the next month, Mike observed everything with the focused intensity of a professional spy. He learned that secure transport containers arrived like clockwork every Tuesday and Friday between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Security checks were absolutely minimal during night shifts because the airport was chronically understaffed and underfunded. Documentation was processed in large batches by overworked clerks, creating dangerous gaps where valuable containers could sit completely unmonitored for hours at a time. Most importantly, he learned that absolutely nobody suspected him of anything criminal. After 22 years of faithful, honest service, Mike Rivers was completely invisible to management, trusted beyond question, essential to operations but totally overlooked as a person. He also learned that he wasn't the only airport employee who had noticed these highly suspicious patterns. It's one thing to hear about the biggest heists in history, it's another to witness them. On our second channel, we rebuild real crimes in 3D so you can watch them happen in real time. The link's in the top right corner of your screen and also in the description below. Rita Chen worked in the cargo documentation department, processing manifests and customs paperwork with military precision and attention to detail. She was 35 years old, razor-sharp intellectually, and had complete access to confidential shipping records that could reveal exactly which containers were worth targeting for maximum profit. Mike had seen her watching him very closely during high-value shipments, taking detailed notes in a small notebook, asking seemingly innocent but actually very subtle and probing questions about cargo handling procedures. Jake was a forklift operator with serious financial debts to dangerous people and severe drinking problems that were getting worse every month. He was desperately hungry for money to pay off creditors and dangerously loose with sensitive information when he'd been drinking. Mike had heard him talking loudly about easy scores and inside jobs when he thought nobody important was listening to his alcohol-influenced rambling in the employee break room. Carlos Martinez, his immediate supervisor, had been acting extremely strange and nervous ever since the container accident, taking unexplained breaks during the most valuable shipments, making hushed phone calls in rapid Spanish when he thought he was completely alone, writing incident reports that didn't accurately match what had actually happened during his shifts. Something was definitely going on with Carlos. Mike realized with crystal clarity that everyone around him was thinking exactly the same criminal thoughts he was thinking. The only real question was who would find the courage and intelligence to act first. Mike decided it would definitely be him. His first target was deliberately modest and carefully chosen, a $75,000 cash shipment that would sit completely unguarded for 2 full hours during the shift change overlap period. Small enough that its mysterious disappearance might be blamed on simple paperwork errors or routine transportation damage, big enough to completely change his pathetic life forever and give him the seed money for bigger scores. Mike spent 3 entire weeks planning every single microscopic detail with obsessive precision that bordered on madness. Every night after his regular shift, he would return home to his cramped apartment and spread detailed airport blueprints across his kitchen table, studying them like a general preparing for war. He memorized every camera angle, every blind spot, every security patrol route with the dedication of a professional thief. He studied security camera patterns obsessively for hours each night, timing their movements with a stopwatch he'd stolen from work. He discovered they automatically switched to backup recording mode every Thursday at exactly 3:20 a.m., creating a precious 20-minute window with significantly degraded footage quality that would make identification nearly impossible. During this window, the cameras captured only grainy, black-and-white images that couldn't distinguish faces or fine details. Mike learned how to replicate official container seals by watching YouTube videos late into the night, practicing on cardboard boxes in his apartment until his fingers could work in complete darkness. He carefully stole materials from the airport maintenance shop over several weeks: special adhesive tape, official-looking stickers, even a small heat gun for melting plastic seals. He practiced the seal replacement procedure dozens of times until he could complete it in under 3 minutes without leaving any obvious traces. He mapped multiple escape routes through the employee parking areas using Google Earth and his own reconnaissance walks during lunch breaks. He calculated exact timing down to the second, accounting for his walking speed, potential delays, and the time needed to reach his car without appearing to rush. He even practiced the route at night, timing himself with his phone's stopwatch to ensure he could make it from the cargo area to his vehicle in under 4 minutes. Mike studied the psychological profiles of the security guards, learning their habits, their weaknesses, their schedules. Guard Patterson always took a smoke break at 3:45 a.m. behind the maintenance building. Guard Williams spent 20 minutes in the bathroom reading magazines around 3:30 a.m. Guard Rodriguez often fell asleep in the security office during quiet periods. Mike cataloged every detail that could be useful. Most importantly, he recruited Jake Morrison as his essential partner in crime. But this required careful psychological manipulation. Mike had been observing Jake for months, studying his financial desperation, his drinking patterns, his loose tongue when alcohol loosened his inhibitions. Jake owed serious money to dangerous people. Mike had overheard him on the phone begging for more time to pay, his voice trembling with fear. The creditors were getting impatient, and Jake was running out of options fast. Mike chose the perfect moment to approach him. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Jake had just received another threatening phone call from his creditor. His hands were shaking as he hung up, and sweat was beading on his forehead, despite the cool air conditioning. "Rough day?" Mike asked casually, sitting down across from Jake in the empty, fluorescent-lit cafeteria. The harsh lighting made Jake's face look pale and sickly. "You could say that," Jake muttered, staring at his untouched sandwich. Mike leaned forward conspiratorially, lowering his voice to barely above a whisper. "What if I told you we could make more money in one single night than we make in 5 years of honest work? I'm talking about real money, Jake. Life-changing money." Jake's bloodshot eyes snapped up to meet Mike's gaze, suddenly alert despite his exhaustion. "What kind of work are we talking about here? Nothing violent, right? I can't handle anything violent." "No violence whatsoever," Mike assured him smoothly. "No guns, no weapons, no confrontations with anyone. Just moving boxes exactly like we always do every day. Except these particular boxes contain something much more valuable than electronic components." "How much money are we talking about exactly?" "I need specifics before I commit to anything." Mike had anticipated this question and had his answer ready. "Enough to pay off all your gambling debts completely and have serious money left over for whatever you want. New car, new apartment, maybe even a fresh start somewhere else where nobody knows your name." Jake's breathing quickened slightly. Mike could see the wheels turning in his head, calculating debts and possibilities. "What's the catch?" "There's always a catch with easy money. The catch is that it has to be absolutely perfect," Mike said seriously. "One single mistake, one moment of panic, one stupid decision, and we're both in federal prison for the rest of our natural lives. This isn't shoplifting candy bars, Jake. This is major federal crime territory." Jake was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Mike could practically hear his internal debate, the desperate need for money warring with the fear of getting caught. Finally, Jake looked up with the resigned expression of a man who had run out of options. "I'm in completely, 100%. What do you need me to do?" Mike smiled for the first time in weeks. "For now, just keep your mouth shut and act normal. I'll contact you when it's time to move. And Jake?" His voice took on a threatening edge. "If you breathe one word of this to anyone, your girlfriend, your drinking buddies, anyone, I'll make sure you go down alone. Understood?" Jake nodded quickly, fear flickering in his eyes. "Understood. My lips are sealed." Thursday night, March 28th, Mike executed his very first criminal heist. 3:15 a.m. The massive cargo terminal was nearly empty except for a few bored security guards making their rounds. Mike walked casually toward Section C, where container STS-4472 sat completely unguarded, like a Christmas present waiting to be opened. According to the official manifest, it contained electronic components weighing exactly 2,400 pounds. According to Mike's careful calculations based on weeks of observation, it contained $75,000 in casino cash. Mike cut through the security seal with a sharp box cutter, his hands steady despite his racing heart. The blade sliced through the thick plastic with a soft whisper that seemed thunderously loud in the silent cargo bay. Inside, he found exactly what he expected, but seeing it with his own eyes still took his breath away. Neat bundles of cash wrapped in clear plastic, each bundle containing exactly $5,000 in mixed bills of various denominations. The money was organized with military precision. $20 bills formed the majority of each bundle, with smaller denominations mixed throughout to avoid suspicion during normal banking transactions. The plastic wrapping was professional grade, the kind used by armored car companies and Federal Reserves. Each bundle was secured with genuine bank bands bearing official stamps and serial numbers. Mike's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the first bundle. The weight was perfect. Exactly what $5,000 in mixed bills should weigh. The smell of ink and paper filled his nostrils, a scent he'd never experienced in such concentration. This wasn't play money or movie props. This was real, genuine, federal currency worth more than his annual salary. He began transferring the bundles methodically into his work bag, counting as he went. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. $25,000. 10, 11, 12. $60,000. The numbers seemed surreal, abstract, like he was moving pieces in a board game rather than committing the crime of his lifetime. 13, 14, 15 bundles, $75,000. More money than he had earned in 2 full years of backbreaking labor for ungrateful employers who treated him like furniture. More money than he had ever seen in one place. More money than his father had earned in his entire lifetime working in the steel mills. As Mike stuffed the final bundle into his bag, he felt a strange sense of completion, as if this moment had been inevitable since the day he first stepped foot in the cargo terminal 22 years ago. All those years of watching rich people's money flow through his hands while he struggled to pay rent on a 1-bedroom apartment. All those years of being invisible, overlooked, undervalued. This was his compensation, his reward for decades of faithful service to a system that didn't care if he lived or died. The weight of the bag surprised him. $75,000 in mixed bills was heavier than he'd anticipated, probably 8 or 9 pounds of pure financial freedom. The bag's shoulder strap cut into his neck, but the discomfort felt good, a physical reminder that this was really happening. Mike carefully resealed the container with emergency tape from his tool belt, trying to make the repair look accidental rather than deliberate. The seal looked obviously wrong to anyone who knew what to look for, clearly tampered with by inexperienced hands, but it was too late to fix it properly without additional tools and time he didn't have. Then he heard heavy footsteps echoing ominously through the cargo bay like thunder in the distance. Carlos Martinez was returning from his break 20 minutes early, completely destroying Mike's carefully calculated timeline. The sound of his supervisor's heavy work boots slapping against concrete grew louder with each step, echoing through the cavernous space like a countdown to disaster. Mike's heart hammered violently against his ribs like a caged animal trying to escape. Adrenaline flooded his system, making his vision sharper and his hearing more acute. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant rumble of aircraft engines, the whisper of air conditioning through the ventilation system. His mouth went dry as cotton, and he could taste copper on his tongue. He quickly resealed the container with emergency tape from his tool belt, his fingers working with desperate speed. The seal looked obviously wrong, clearly tampered with by inexperienced hands, but it was too late to fix it properly without additional tools and time he didn't have. The tape was the wrong color, the wrong texture. Anyone with half a brain would notice the discrepancy immediately. Mike stepped back from the container and tried to arrange his face into an expression of casual boredom, the look of a man performing routine duties rather than committing federal crimes. He forced his breathing to slow, his shoulders to relax, his hands to stop trembling. He had to become invisible Mike Rivers again, the trustworthy employee who had never caused trouble in 22 years. "Why are you working alone out here?" Carlos asked suspiciously, appearing around the corner like a ghost materializing from the shadows. His eyes were narrowed with distrust, scanning the area like a detective examining a crime scene. Carlos might be overweight and lazy, but he wasn't stupid. He'd survived in management for 15 years by noticing things that didn't belong. Mike's bag sat exactly 3 feet away, containing $75,000 in stolen cash. The bag looked ordinary enough, just another piece of equipment in a workspace filled with tools and supplies. But if Carlos decided to search him or ask pointed questions about what was in the bag, it was completely over. Mike would spend the rest of his life in federal prison, and his dreams of financial freedom would die in this cargo bay. "Jake's in the bathroom," Mike said, forcing his voice to stay completely calm and natural despite the terror clawing at his throat. "Just checking manifests like always. Routine inspection, nothing unusual." His voice sounded normal to his own ears, but he wondered if Carlos could hear the underlying tension, the slight tremor that betrayed his nervousness. Mike had never been a good liar, which was part of what made him so trustworthy in management's eyes. Honest employees didn't need to develop deception skills. Carlos examined the container carefully with his flashlight, the beam dancing across the surface like a spotlight on a stage. His beady eyes focused immediately on the torn tape, like a detective examining evidence at a crime scene. Mike could see the wheels turning in his supervisor's head, processing what he was seeing, comparing it to what should be there. "This looks like someone deliberately opened it," Carlos said slowly, running his finger along the edge of the tape. "This isn't shipping damage. Someone cut through this seal and tried to reseal it." The words hung in the air between them like an accusation. Mike felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool night air. His palms were slick with moisture, and he had to resist the urge to wipe them on his work pants. Any sudden movement might draw Carlos's attention to his nervousness. Mike's bag sat exactly 3 feet away, close enough to touch, containing more money than either of them would see in a lifetime of honest work. If Carlos decided to search him, if he called security, if he reported the tampered container immediately, Mike's criminal career would end before it truly began. "Must have happened during rough transport," Mike said smoothly, his voice betraying none of his inner terror. The lie came easier than he'd expected, flowing naturally from his lips. "You know how careless and rough they are loading containers at LAX? Those guys don't care about anything except getting home." Carlos stared at the container for what felt like an eternity, his face unreadable in the harsh fluorescent lighting. Mike could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears like a drum. Seconds stretched into minutes. The weight of the money-filled bag seemed to grow heavier, as if gravity itself was trying to expose his crime. Then Carlos shrugged his fat shoulders dismissively, apparently satisfied with the explanation. "Yeah, probably. Those idiots don't care about anything except their paychecks. They'd probably load containers with a forklift if they could get away with it. Make sure you file a proper damage report before your shift ends." "Will do, boss. Absolutely. I'll get the paperwork started right away." Carlos waddled away into the darkness, his footsteps fading until Mike was alone again with his stolen fortune. Mike waited exactly 10 agonizing minutes, counting every second on his watch, before he dared to move. His legs felt weak, unsteady, as if he'd just finished running a marathon. The theft wasn't discovered for 3 full days. When it finally was, the missing money was quickly attributed to transportation discrepancies and documentation errors by airport bureaucrats who didn't want to deal with a complex investigation. Nobody suspected internal theft. Nobody suspected Mike Rivers. But someone had been watching very carefully. Exactly 2 weeks later, Mike received a text message from an unknown number. "I saw what you did that night. We need to talk immediately. Don't ignore this." The sender was Rita Chen. They met in the employee parking garage after midnight, hidden between rows of cars. Rita was direct and completely businesslike, getting straight to the point. "I know you took money from the STS container," she said coldly, her dark eyes boring into his. "I also know you're planning to do it again very soon. I can see it in your eyes." Mike stayed completely silent, refusing to incriminate himself. "I control all the documentation," Rita continued confidently. "I can tell you which containers have the most cash, when they're most vulnerable, how to make the paperwork disappear completely without a trace. But I want 50% of everything. And if I say no, then I report what I saw to airport security tomorrow morning, and you spend the rest of your life in federal prison." Mike studied her face carefully in the dim parking garage lighting. Rita wasn't bluffing at all. She was also offering him something extremely valuable: inside information and complete documentation control. "What exactly do you have in mind?" he asked. Rita smiled coldly. "Container STS 4501, 300,000 in cash arriving Friday night. Disguised as machine parts just like before. Minimal security, perfect opportunity for someone with the right skills. 300,000 is a lot more than 75. Much higher risk of getting caught. Much higher reward. But we need your friend Jake to create a believable distraction that will keep security busy." Mike thought about it seriously. $300,000. Split 3 ways. That was over 100,000 each. More money than he had ever dreamed of possessing in his entire life. "Okay," he said finally. "But this time we do it absolutely right. No mistakes." Friday night, April 12th, the second heist. Mike had learned valuable lessons from his previous mistakes. This time, he mapped the exact timing of security patrols every 47 minutes, studied different container seal types to create perfect replicas, and prepared a detailed distraction plan involving fake maintenance emergencies. 2:45 a.m., Mike and Jake began the operation with military precision. They located container STS-4501 exactly where Rita said it would be positioned. Mike cut through the seal while Jake watched nervously for guards, his hands shaking with fear and excitement. Inside, stacks of cash bundled in plastic. $300,000 in beautiful, crisp bills. Then Rita Chen appeared out of absolutely nowhere like a ghost. "Urgent paperwork," she announced loudly, waving a clipboard in the air. "Need to verify this shipment immediately for customs." Jake panicked completely. He dropped a bundle of cash, and it scattered across the concrete floor in a cascade of $20 bills. Mike quickly kicked the money under a piece of heavy equipment while calmly talking to Rita as if nothing unusual was happening. "Everything's normal here. Just doing routine checks like always." "What's wrong with him?" Rita asked, noticing Jake's obvious nervousness and suspicious behavior. "Hurt his back moving heavy containers," Mike explained smoothly. "He's in a lot of pain." That's when security arrived unexpectedly. "Got a report of unusual activity in this area," the guard said seriously, scanning the area with his bright flashlight. "Someone called in suspicious noises." Mike's mind raced frantically. They were standing 10 feet from an open container full of cash, with money scattered on the floor, and a security guard asking direct questions about what they were doing. "Yeah, Jake threw out his back lifting," Mike said calmly. "I was just helping him fill out an injury report for workers' compensation." The guard bought it completely. While he was writing up Jake's injury on official paperwork, Mike secretly retrieved the dropped cash bundles and finished loading the money into his bag. They completed the theft while a security guard stood 10 feet away, completely oblivious to the crime happening right under his nose. But Mike realized something very important. Rita's appearance wasn't coincidental at all. She had been watching them carefully, testing them, making sure they could handle serious pressure without falling apart. The question was, could they trust her with their lives? The second theft netted $300,000, split 3 ways, $100,000 each. Mike had never felt so wealthy or so paranoid in his entire life. Rita knew too much about their operation. Jake was acting increasingly suspicious and unstable. Carlos was asking more probing questions about container discrepancies, and federal agents had started showing up at the airport asking questions. Mike first noticed them during a routine shift in early May. 2 men in expensive suits examining cargo manifests with airport security officials. They looked exactly like FBI agents, and they were asking detailed questions about transportation discrepancies and unusual patterns in cargo theft. Mike realized that multiple cash thefts at different airports across the country had triggered a serious federal investigation. Time was running out fast, but Rita had a plan for one final score that would set them up for life. "Christmas week," she explained during a clandestine meeting in an abandoned warehouse. "Skeleton crew, minimal oversight, perfect opportunity. There's a shipment worth $1.2 million arriving December 23rd. $1.2 million? Jake's eyes went wide with greed. "That's $400,000 each." "It's also the kind of score that brings serious federal heat," Mike warned. "Which is why it's perfect," Rita said. "They'll never expect us to hit the biggest shipment during the highest security period. It's the ultimate hiding in plain sight." Mike studied the plan carefully. Rita had manipulated duty rosters to ensure friendly guards worked that shift. Jake would coordinate with maintenance to create a power outage distraction. Mike would bypass the new electronic seals that had been installed after the previous thefts. It was ambitious, dangerous, and absolutely brilliant. December 23rd, 3:15 a.m., the third heist. Everything started perfectly according to plan. The power outage began exactly on schedule. Emergency lighting activated, creating the dim, chaotic conditions they needed. Mike located container STS-4612 and began working on the sophisticated electronic seal with specialized tools. Inside, more cash than he had ever seen in one place. Bundles and bundles of currency, totaling $1.2 million according to Rita's inside intelligence. Then the FBI arrived without warning. "We're doing random cargo checks tonight," an agent announced to airport security officials. Mike froze completely. The container was wide open, cash was clearly visible, and federal agents were walking directly toward his location with flashlights. Rita's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Fire alarm! Now!" Suddenly, fire alarms blared throughout the terminal. Emergency evacuation protocols activated automatically. Airport personnel began clearing the cargo area rapidly. "Where's the fire?" the FBI agent demanded, returning to investigate the source of the alarm. "This area should be completely empty," his partner added suspiciously. Mike crouched behind containers, holding $1.2 million in cash bags, while an FBI agent searched the area methodically with a powerful flashlight. The beam passed inches from his hiding spot. The agent's radio crackled. "False alarm, return to checkpoint immediately." Mike waited 20 agonizing minutes in absolute darkness before completing the theft. When he finally emerged, he was carrying $1.2 million in stolen money, and federal agents were none the wiser. But the close call had shaken him badly. The FBI wasn't just investigating random cargo theft anymore. They were specifically targeting cash shipments, using sophisticated surveillance and coordinated operations. Mike realized that he was no longer an invisible cargo loader pulling off opportunistic thefts. He was the target of a serious federal investigation. 3 days after Christmas, Carlos Martinez confronted him directly. "I know what you guys are doing," Carlos said during a private meeting in his office. "The containers, the cash, the paperwork discrepancies. Either cut me in for 25% or I report everything to the FBI tomorrow." Mike stared at his supervisor. Carlos had been documenting their activities, building evidence, waiting for the right moment to make his move. "How long have you known?" Mike asked. "Since the first theft. You think I'm stupid? Container seals don't tear themselves. Money doesn't just disappear into thin air." Mike realized that Carlos had been protecting them, filing false reports, covering their tracks. Not out of loyalty, but because he wanted a piece of the action. 25% of what? Mike asked. Carlos smiled. "The next job. Rita's got intel on a $2 million shipment arriving New Year's week. Split 4 ways, that's $500,000 each. $2 million. It was more money than Mike had ever imagined stealing. It was also the kind of score that would bring every federal agent in Nevada down on their heads. But greed overruled caution. January 2nd, 2:30 a.m., the final heist. The team assembled for their biggest score yet. Rita initiated computer system maintenance mode to disable monitoring. Jake created a distraction with fake equipment malfunction. Mike approached container STS-4701, knowing it contained $2 million in casino cash. As he cut through the seal, Mike felt a strange sense of destiny. This was it, the score that would set him up for life. After this, he could disappear to Costa Rica, buy that beach house, never worry about money again. The container opened to reveal stacks of cash that seemed to glow in his flashlight beam. $2 million. More money than most people earned in a lifetime. Then Carlos appeared with federal agents. "We have reports of cargo tampering in this area," an FBI agent announced. Mike was trapped inside the container bay with $2 million in stolen money. Carlos was looking directly at him, but instead of pointing him out, Carlos said, "Let me check the manifests. Everything should be normal." Why was Carlos protecting him? Then Mike understood. Carlos wasn't just extorting them for money. He was working with the FBI, setting them up, gathering evidence for the biggest cargo theft bust in airport history. But Jake's equipment malfunction became a real emergency. Chemical vapors from his fake mechanical failure triggered genuine hazmat protocols. Fire department and emergency response teams arrived to evacuate the area. In the chaos of the evacuation, Mike emerged from the container bay carrying $2 million hidden in fire department gear bags. He walked past FBI agents, past airport security, past Carlos Martinez, completely invisible in his role as a helpful employee assisting with the emergency. The most audacious theft in airport history happened right under the noses of federal agents actively investigating cargo theft. Mike had stolen $3.575 million in 4 increasingly dangerous heists. He thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. 1 week later, Rita contacted Mike with information about a $5 million shipment, the biggest score yet. Despite the federal heat, despite the close calls, despite every rational thought telling him to stop, Mike's greed overcame his caution. "One more job and we're set for life," he told Jake. January 9th, 2:45 a.m. Mike walked into the cargo terminal for what he thought would be his final heist. Everything seemed perfect. Rita had provided detailed intelligence about reduced security. Jake had mapped escape routes through cargo tunnels. The team coordination was better than ever. Mike located the target container exactly where Rita said it would be. He removed the seals with practiced efficiency. He opened the container expecting to find $5 million in cash. Instead, he found surveillance equipment and FBI agents. "FBI, nobody move!" Spotlights flooded the cargo area from every direction. Armed agents emerged from behind containers, from ceiling positions, from concealed vehicles. And then Rita Chen stepped out from behind a forklift, wearing an FBI wire and a federal agent's vest. "Sorry, Mike," she said, "but 25 years was too long for me." Mike stared at her in shock. "You've been working with them from the beginning." Rita nodded. "The moment you trusted me, you lost everything." Mike realized the horrible truth. Rita Chen was an undercover FBI agent. Every theft had been monitored, recorded, documented. Every conversation had been transmitted to federal investigators. Every plan had been part of an elaborate sting operation designed to catch him in the act of committing federal crimes. The FBI had known about his activities since the second theft. They had allowed him to continue stealing, building evidence, creating an airtight case for federal prosecution. "Mike Rivers," an agent announced, "you're under arrest." As they handcuffed him, Mike saw news cameras capturing his downfall. Jake Morrison was arrested trying to flee through cargo tunnels. Carlos Martinez was taken into custody for his role in the conspiracy. 6 months later, Mike Rivers sat in federal prison wearing an orange jumpsuit and watching the evening news. The reporter was covering Rita Chen's commendation ceremony. Rita stood at a podium, accepting awards from FBI directors. She looked directly into the camera and said, "Sometimes the best way to catch a criminal is to become their most trusted partner." Mike turned off the television. He had stolen $3.575 million over 4 elaborate heists. He had outmaneuvered airport security, federal agents, and sophisticated surveillance systems. But he had made one fatal mistake. He had trusted the wrong person. Sometimes the person you trust most is the one who destroys you. Mike Rivers learned that lesson $3.6 million too late. Subscribe if you think greed always catches up with you in the end. Hit that like button if you saw the betrayal coming from the beginning. And let me know in the comments. Do you think Mike deserved what happened to him? Or was Rita the real villain for playing both sides? Your answer might surprise you.